Good afternoon, Washoe and the world, and you're listening to Find a Job Fridays. Why? Because it's Friday. Hey, it's a fun day. And your career coaches, Laynette Evans and Renie Bonner, are here. Welcome, welcome.
Hi, Chip.
You have lined up some terrific guests today. I'm excited about this show.
It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, we're really excited today because we're going to be joined by one of our former colleagues, Roxanne Park, who was with us in the Join Career Center for several years and has started some of her own adventures, and also by Darrell Gurney. He's a career coach and author of a book, Never Apply for a Job Again, which we use every day in our job club.
This is very exciting to actually have Darrell Gurney on our show. In the job club at Join, we introduced Darrell's book, Never Apply for a Job Again, and this was, I guess, about 3 years ago. And our clients at Join have had tremendous success using the methods that Darrell has outlined in his book to actually find a job. It has been a phenomenal success for us. And so I think this would be a good time for Darrell to actually introduce himself and tell everybody a little bit about his book.
Thanks, Laynette, and thanks for you and Roxanne continuing to team up and spread this message. I really appreciate the opportunity.
We're excited to have you, Darrell.
Well, first off, the book comes out of my own personal experience. And I noticed one of y'all's sponsors is a staffing organization. That's actually part of my background. Let me just tell you the quick story that created this is that I came to LA. I didn't know a soul. I wanted to get into the entertainment industry. I had degrees in finance and international business. But entertainment is a tough world to crack into. I knew I had to do something different than everybody else. And so I went to a career coaching firm. I think people who go to coaches are smart, and it's like I invested in a career coach at age 24, and they taught me a method that I've refined over the years, but I call it the backdoor or stealth method. And by using that method, I met with the CFOs, the chief financial officers of the top 7 entertainment studios in their offices within 2 months. And I was offered a position with MGM without even going through HR. And so the thing is that was kind of how I implemented this technique, because I saw that it's really about relationships. It's really about who knows you. And so, anyhow, I went on to be I spent a year and a half at MGM, but then I realized I didn't really like numbers. And so I reached out to a headhunter, a recruiter that I had connected with, and he said, well, why don't you give this a try? I went on to being a recruiter for 15 years, placing people. And then during the last recession, well, not the last recession, but the 2001 recession, I saw that, without recruiters, a lot of people just didn't know how to manage their own careers. And so I set out to switch more into being a career coach like y'all, and to kind of convey this method of how getting known by people, getting known by the people in the know is always going to be a whole lot better and get you a lot more results than trying to go through the front door of online job ads and job boards and all that kind of stuff.
Darrell, we so totally buy into that concept and teach it every day to our clients, and yet we do find a certain amount of resistance because people don't know how to make those connections. What I really loved about your book is that it outlines a process. So just tell us a little bit about the process, maybe in an outline form, because we're going to get into your 10 principles in more detail.
Okay, cool. Well, really what it comes down to, and most people do have resistance to this because we're just trained. I mean, from when we grew up, and all of us on this show, have probably been around a little while. And so we grew up when there were newspapers. Y'all remember newspapers?
Barely. Remember when the San Jose Mercury News was so heavy you had to get a forklift to carry it around?
Exactly.
In the LA Times.
Exactly. And there was this thing called classifieds, right? And so we grew up where, if you needed a job, you looked in the classifieds, you look to see what's open, right? And so there's a little resistance because that's the way the mind is still geared. It's still geared towards a front door. Let me see what's open out there. Let me see what's available so I can go. And here's what people don't realize. So I can go compete with every Tom, Dick, and Harriet for that job.
And it is the most competitive arena, isn't it?
Yeah.
to do it that way. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, and with the onslaught or onset of the digital world, since all of us were out, initially looking for jobs through the classifieds. Now, when you're online and you're trying to get a job online, they won't even let you move to the next page until you tell them what you've made in the past. There's no finessing. There's no, like getting to know somebody. So the point is that what I do is what the book is about how do you get out there and get known by people, and through the human psychology, through the power of relationships. Y'all know, I know that people want to work with people they know and like, and this is all about how do I get known and liked. And it also allows for people to make entire career changes, because when you're known and liked, you can even get into things you haven't done before, because people will give you a break. But through the front door, you never get that kind of chance.
And that's exactly what we see. And we also have on the line Roxanne, who actually put into practice some of what she learned from your book and from you directly. Roxanne, tell us a little bit about how you have used Darrell's method and what came of that.
Yes, I actually, when I left Join, I didn't have the time to do all the things we would coach our clients to do as career coaches, and research and set up all my network headed moving all the way across country. And so when I found myself in a complete foreign place, I remembered telling the job club as I was leaving. They were sad to see me go, and I told them that I was going to go and use the method that we had been teaching them, because we'd gotten a little pushback. We had just really started integrating Darrell's work into the job club when I left Join.
Mm-hmm.
And so I used his method because I'm an experienced coach and know a job search expert. I didn't have to use the step-by-step process that Darrell really outlines very well in his book, but I started reaching out and connecting, doing informational interviews, and I really approached it as a research project, as Darrell recommends in his book, rather than approaching it as a job search per se, but as a research project. And it was really interesting because Darrell has several anecdotes in his book about how amazing this process works, and sometimes more than you could ever possibly imagine. And that's exactly what happened to me. The very first person I actually reached out just to pick their brain as part of my research project ended up offering me a job the very next day after our first conversation. And I really still pinch myself how effectively that worked. I was not looking for a job when I contacted her. It was the furthest thing from my thought process, and I know that you're going to talk about Darrell's rules in a little bit, and that's one of the rules is to not really be looking for a job. And so it worked very well for me. I did it instinctively, and it was after the fact that I really recognized that I had done what Darrell had recommended, and it worked beautifully.
Wow.
Well, you were, this is Renie. It's so nice hearing from you, Roxanne. You were really a student of Darrell's process, as I remember. And it's so wonderful to hear how successful you were in implementing many of the suggestions and processes that were known to work in the past. And since then, we have seen many of our students or clients that have been as successful in this approach.
Well, I would say as successful, except I don't know any that have yet gotten a job offer on their first
Not the
research
first.
interview.
Not the first. You are a rock star,
Yeah.
Roxy.
Well, I had a little advantage in that I have some experience, but I really don't think that came into play. But it's very effective, and I have recommended Darrell's book to dozens of people, purchased several, and given them to my clients who this certain approach would work very well for them. And so I'm definitely a fan And as we all know, the side door approach is the way to go.
Yeah, we totally agree. And Darrell, we make it required reading for all of our clients who come through the job club. So Darrell, explain to us why you say the best way to get a job is don't be looking for one.
Well, Roxanne just spoke about it, and it's actually what had it be effective. Look, she mentioned the term informational interview, and I'm not going to try to turn the world around, but that phrase has been around for about 40 years now. It started with Bernard Haldane. It transferred through John Crystal onto Dick Bowles. And so there's this idea of an informational interview, but I actually tell people, don't say that term, because today it's associated with I need a job, okay? And the thing is that, look, if you need a job, it's not that people wouldn't like to help you, but the point is that people don't want to be put in a position where they may not be able to help. And that's why when you're out advertising and you're desperate and stuff like that, you'll actually meet a lot less people, because people don't want to be put in a position to say no. They don't, they want to know that if they're going to meet with you, then there's some way they're going to win. They're not going to lose, right? So the point being is when I say the best way to get a job is don't be looking for one, is that is really dropping the objective of a job, dropping this desperation, because desperation just drips off of people. And, look, you and I have all experienced when you come, I don't know if they have this out there where y'all are, but here in LA, you go up to almost any corner and there's going to be somebody with a little cardboard sign, and it's going to say, God bless, please, need food or something. And the thing is you give them $1 or something like that, but you feel bad. You just feel bad. And so the thing is that when people are out there desperate, people feel uncomfortable around that. So the whole point being is, and I think this is where Roxanne was coming from, is what I tell people, don't do informational interviews, but do get clear of what are you really interested in. See, I think a career transition is the best thing that could ever happen to people. I've worked with people who just got laid off. And, it's funny. Some of them are doing a dance, when they get the word from HR, because they've been wanting to get out of there. And then the ones that are crying, I'll say, well, did you ever think there might be something else for you? And they'll say, well, yeah, I've been wanting to get out of here for years, So the point is like, prayers are answered sometimes when you don't expect it. I think whenever it's always an opportunity to move, to bigger and better. So if you can drop the desperation and really start getting in touch with, where am I at in my life right now? I'm very different than I was 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago. What's important to me now? What are the things I'm interested in now? And start coming up with what your fascinations are. And then we can talk more about, the next steps. But the point is, get out there and start talking to people about what you're fascinated by.
And do you find that people have a difficult time coming up with the answer to that when you work with people directly?
Well, here's the thing. It's not, first off, you got to get people off of the path and the urgency and the desperation. See, it's like we're like rats on a wheel a lot of times in life. And it's just like, look, I've been busy. I need to get busy again. And it's that I got to get busy again that deters people from like just stopping for a second, breathing, and going, where am I at in life right now? I've got some exercises in the book. One is, hey, if money or career didn't matter, what would you naturally be doing right now? Who would you be talking to? What kind of things would you be engaged in? See, we think that we would be out golfing and having Mai Tais on the beach. But the point being
and your point is?
The point is that gets old really fast. Because I've talked to a lot of people who have that, and it's like they do that for a year and they want to get back to work, even the people who've retired. So my point is that if you can get in touch with what really fascinates you, I have other exercises. I have a classifieds exercise. I have a resparking exercise, and you can, so yes, you do have to get people to look, but it's right there under the surface. And if we can just start uncovering some of those just under the surface interests, then those can build into entire research campaigns.
Darrell, don't you find that in many cases your publication helps to give people permission to actually do what you've just described?
Well, it does. It does because it shows them a method. Because see, most of the time, people, here's one of the things I think that's come up in the show thus far, but I just want to say it is that people think they should already know. But no, you don't have to already know. I mean, if you keep turning to your own best thinking, all you get more is of your own best thinking. You get the same result, right?
That's
but
right.
what it is, it's about what's an effective way to get out with people. And most people think that if I go out there and start talking to people, it'll be like, I don't know what I want to do with my life, and they're going to feel weird. This gives them a method to feel good about themselves, gives them a method to, really know their own value and to get out and talk to people based on that. And look, anyone with a mission or a vision is way more attractive than somebody who needs a job.
Oh, absolutely. And you have a phrase that you use called "Don't be a needy job seeker," and we have adopted that with our clients and find that they start to repeat it as well. Okay, yes, I know I'm sounding like a needy job seeker. I need to change my head. So that has been really useful, and I really like the way that you put that. You also have said an ounce of research is worth a pound of job search, and you've started to talk about this research project. But tell us how our job seekers that are listening can do research instead of job search to find a job. How can they develop those projects?
Okay. Well, first off, like I said, start looking beyond the urgency of the moment and look at, like, where am I at in my life? What really fascinates me? Look, I've had clients that have made entire career changes because they're just very different than they were 20 years ago when they started in marketing at a telecom company. They're just very different, and looking to see what those things are. And then there's a process of, first you got to find out who are the leaders and who are the people in those areas, so you got to do your research. There's the process of approaching those people. Now, you can't approach them because you need a job. But look, Renie and Laynette, you tell me, if somebody tomorrow said to you, gosh, I have been thinking of career counseling for years. I've been in this corporate job for a long time, and it'd be a whole big change. I don't know a whole lot about it, but I know, and I've heard about you, and I've heard how good you are and stuff like that. Would you just give me 5 minutes of your time? I'd love to just find out a little bit more about that field. Tell me which one of you wouldn't talk to this person.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh no, we'd both be there talking over each other, trying to get our point across. Absolutely, you're so right.
Yeah, and that's the point. It's appealing to human psychology because look, if you tell me that I can win, there's a chance I'll meet with you. Because I'll win. I want to feel good about myself. So if I can agree to meet with you for 5 minutes because you're exploring something and I can go away feeling like I made a contribution, that's good. Now, there's an art and a science. And by the way, I don't want your listeners to think, this is a trick. Okay, so we're going to act like we want to find out about stuff so we can go in and get a job. Okay, so it's not that. It really is a mindset shift. Okay, but when you do really get in touch with the things that you're fascinated by, you find out who are the people that are leading that cause or involved in that in any way, and then you find ways to effectively get in front of them. You'd be amazed at if you put in again, we can talk about how you actually conduct that meeting, but none of my clients leave these meetings in less than an hour. They only ask for 5 minutes. And they never leave in less than an hour, and the person is glad they came in,
And that's been the experience of our clients too. They'll come back and they'll say, wow, all I had to do was ask that first question, and then the conversation just went on and on.
Yeah.
So it is very, very effective. Roxanne, tell us how this looked for you. Now, you said that you didn't actually think about yourself as doing research, but my recollection is that when you started out, you actually had a goal in mind to start your own practice, and does that sound right? And then you were just looking for advice from others?
Yes, I actually was doing research, and I reached out to another careers professional who specializes in not only the federal hiring process, but working with veterans who are transitioning either from their military into civilian or federal work, and I was exploring. I had just completed my Tough Transitions course, specializing in working with individuals who are making tough career transitions, and was considering opening a practice specializing with veterans who are transitioning. So I reached out to Camille Carbonell Roberts at CC Career Services, who specializes in working with veterans as one of her specialties, to pick her brain about what she thought the potential was for a coach moving into that, and get some suggestions on how I might go about doing that. And the conversation evolved into something much, much more than that.
And that initial conversation was what, 2 hours?
The initial conversation, and I really expected it to be about a 20-minute conversation. She's an incredibly busy lady, and it was about 2 hours. And then she started sending me emails, dozens of them, with questions, because at the end of that original phone call, she had offered to mentor me, which I was just over the moon with that. And after answering her dozens of emails over the next several hours and the next day, came the job offer.
Rox, we get a lot of clients that will say, I don't know anybody here, or, my family is all somewhere else, or they're all gone. We get that a lot, dead, in fact. And they're not all dead. But, Roxanne traveled all the way across the country. The only person she knew when she got there was her husband. And I tell you, this is just the perfect story of success in how you can build your network, no matter where you are, and with how few people that you might actually know. Isn't that right, Roxy?
It absolutely is, and I credit the social media as the tools to use for that, to make some of those initial contacts. I had already been following Camille primarily on Facebook. She's on all the channels, LinkedIn, Facebook, and Twitter, Google Plus, etc. But I had been following her closely on Facebook, and my original contact was to ping her through Facebook to see if she might have some time to spend a few minutes with me. And that's how I started the initial conversation. But I had already been interacting with her from afar, so to speak. And Darrell mentions it really is about building those relationships, and also that purity of intention that you go in looking for information in those research interviews.
That's wonderful. Darrell, you emphasize the importance of getting face-to-face meetings with these so-called experts. I was particularly intrigued by one of the things you said on your YouTube video, which we access frequently, and that is there are chemical reactions and bonding principles that take place when two people come together. Can you explain what you mean by this?
I've always known that's the case, just intuitively and empirically, and at the same time I'm reading a book right now that really talks about our roots as human beings. And, I don't want to challenge anyone's beliefs or whatever, but, and when you go back through the primates and all that kind of stuff, when you look at, the different backgrounds that the human being evolved from, we're actually the most social of all of them. We are just so social. It's like one of the things that distinguishes human being as human being is the socialness of it. And so the thing is that, Roxanne was talking about how she connected with Camille through social media. One of the things I say in the book is that it's absolutely a valuable tool today. Social media makes those connections, those initial connections possible. And at the same time, you want to bring high touch to high tech, because when people do get together, and y'all know it, it's like if you have a big old LinkedIn, a lot of people in your LinkedIn, and somebody just comes in and shoots you an email or something, it's like you don't know them. But anyone you've ever sat down with, anyone you've ever met personally, they've kind of got one of these, what is that, family and friends little ping pictures that come up in your head, right? And so the point is that when you sit down with people, it does start generating this natural human tendency to want to help, to want to be involved, to want to participate with another human being. And that along with the magic of how you conduct one of these backdoor meetings, which one of the first things you do is you get them talking about themselves. You get them talking about themselves, and you sit there and you look at them like a rock star. And the more fascinated you are with them and the more you invest in knowing about them, it almost becomes a subconscious, obligatory thing on their part that they're going to want to do anything they can for you.
And you know what? That just makes so much sense. I know that the people who are involved in sales know this trick. I mean, it's not a trick. Know this principle that you get other people to talk about themselves, and that creates relationship. Is that what you're saying?
Oh, absolutely. Always better to be interested than interesting. And so what I do, and I tell people to, if you're going to do a front door interview, and I'm not saying don't, just bag all the front door stuff. I'm just telling people, put your biggest emphasis on back door rather than front door. But even if you go in a front door thing where someone called you in from a resume you submitted, one of the smartest things you can say to that HR manager is, hey, Tammy, thank you so much for bringing me in. This looks very interesting. I'm so glad to be here. And, I've got questions, and I'm sure you have a lot for me. But before we even get started, Tammy, how long have you been here? What do you think about the company? What got you here? What was your background? And you just get Tammy talking about herself. And guess what? Even that HR manager will fall prey to the fact that, there's relationship building there, as opposed to the tendency for sure on the front door is they're going to start going to their checklist and seeing if you have this, if you have this, if you have this.
Darrell, you'll appreciate in the middle 70s, there was a great deal of research done on effective meetings. What were the components of effective meetings in the workplace? And they slash it. Is it the topic? Is it the number of experts there? Is it the amount of work that gets done? And at the end of that, they measured satisfaction with that meeting. And the highest correlation is I got to talk the most.
Exactly.
And it just kind of blew everybody away. They just, meetings. No, I got to express myself.
Two ears and one mouth. We've always heard that. You got 2 ears, you got one mouth. So, use the 2 ears more than the one mouth. And again, if you let them use the one mouth, then you just score. I call it relationship equity. The more you get someone talking about themselves and the more fascinated you are with them, you are building this subconscious, behind the scenes relationship equity. Because look, there's a great book written by a guy named Robert Cialdini called Influence. And what he shows, he's a professor at Arizona State University. He shows that we think that people want to take more than they give. We're not geared that way. We are geared. We want to have the account settled. So if somebody's given us a lot, there's an internal thing within us that we want to settle that account. So we're going to try to give back.
Darrell, your book is so rich with examples and stories, and as we wind down in our last few minutes, I would love it if you would share a couple of the stories that either we have never heard or the ones that you share in the book that our listeners may not have heard.
Okay, well, let me give you just a couple approaches. At the back of the book, actually, there's a whole appendix about how this stealth approach has been used, not only for people to get jobs, but how they can rise up in their own company, or how they can create a nonprofit, or they can create a business, or whatever. But here's just a couple. One is a woman approached me. She was working for Pac Bell. She was in the marketing. She was a VP of marketing with Pac Bell, and she figured, that she was stuck in, marketing and then stuck in telecom for the rest of her life. Most people have this myopic view and these golden handcuffs of what they've done in the past. But she wanted to make a change, and so I took her through a process of getting her at a mile-high view of herself to see what is her unique essence that transcends industry, it transcends her title, whatever. And so she got that view of herself that she saw was transferable to anything. Then we went through a process of branding and packaging where we actually give her a personal brand. I think everyone should have a personal brand that distinguishes them from everyone else. And it should show up in your resume. It should show up in what you say about yourself. But then I got her out in the back door talking to people about what really fascinated her. She was Jewish. She was very into her culture. Always wanted to do something in Judaism, but hey, she was used to big corporate America. America. Anyhow, through the back door and just getting known by people, this person said, well, you ought to talk to this person, you ought to, da-da-da-da-da. She ends up becoming the executive director of a nonprofit that trains bomb-sniffing dogs for Israel.
Now there's a story.
So, that's one story of how people can make entire changes through this method that they couldn't make through the front door. I'll tell you another quick short one. Another client of mine was a VP of marketing with Epson. They make the big printers and everything. And so he had just left there, and he had a couple partners working with him, and they were consulting, and they were trying to get in with companies and show them how to, turn their marketing around and everything. And y'all know a sales call as well as I do. And so let's say they put out 100 calls a day to CEOs. They might get 3 calls back because everybody knows a sales call, right? So then he got a sense of this backdoor method and how to cater it to him. And he went to his buddies, his partners, and he said, look, we're going to start writing articles for technical publications. The magazines that used to talk about the new PCs, the new printers and all that. We're going to write articles, and we're going to go interview CEOs about trends in the industry or what their opinions are about things. Now, one of the things we haven't talked about here, one of the principles in my book is call me expert and I'll open my door. If you go out there and you tell someone, hey, you're an expert, I would love to talk to you about something. So what they did is they called these CEOs now to start interviewing them. Now, out of 100 calls that they put out that way, they get 95 return calls, right? Because everybody wants to, be known as an expert, plus these CEOs know free advertising. So what they did was they would go in. I mean, this is not a ruse story. You do what you say you're going to do. You do the research. They would go in, they would conduct these interviews. Inevitably, at the end of every interview, the CEO would say, well, why are you guys doing this? And they would say, well, between us, we have 50 years in this industry. We feel like it's a way to give back. We're talking to experts like you all the time, and therefore this is kind of our avenue for giving back. Oh, so you're talking to experts like me all the time. Well, we should talk to you about some of our issues we've got here. So they were getting gigs, but not going through the Me Too, hey, pick me front door side of things. They were going through a backdoor approach. This can work for building a business. This can work for getting a job. It goes across the board. It's all about human psychology and relationships.
And creating relationships. Well, Darrell, can you tell our listeners how to get a hold of you if they're interested in working with you or getting a hold of your book?
Absolutely. Well, go to careerguy.com and you can sign up to get 2 free ebooks right there on the home page of careerguy.com. You can also sign up for my newsletter, and there's lots of ways to get a hold of me. Just make sure you get hooked up with me on that newsletter. Love to help.